Boom! You know, bro, got vibrant, bad like way power and rory. But here what? At the time for the lion, them tell them story. Lion voice. A bro, got vibrant. I said, don't listen to it once, don't listen to it twice. Subscribe, like, and share. You hear? Boom! Cause just because I hear them. Cause them a fast and pray just to see we fail. Lion voice. Boom, got vibrant rep.
Well, front to us a son was born and a child was given.
I want to ask you a question. Have you got your book? Haile Selassie's Ethiopia Volume 1, The Rise of the Priest Warrior King. I've read the book in its entirety, and I must say it's very inspirational, very informative, and very historical, right?
Them call him Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from sky. Them call him Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. They call him Rastafari. Lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Them call him Rastafari. Read the Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Then born near the city of Harar, the inspiration for Bob Marley's guitar. People crowd him like some big superstar. It no matter if England.
Let us jump into the program. So, the origin of Rastafari and Ganja. Let's just understand that Ganja is something that is part of the human story. Cannabis sativa was part of the human story. We look at even in the Emperor Wears No Clothes, they talk about the history where it was found woven fabrics of hemp cloth, 8,000 BC, 7,000 BC. It was written about in Chinese medicine in the BC time as well. You know, one of the oldest recorded herbal plants. It's been used by mankind through the ages in Africa as well. The tradition has been there of using cannabis in the Northeast Africa, which they call the Middle East. They found cannabis seeds all throughout the ritual Hebrew sites and things, so they know that cannabis was one of the ingredients in the anointing oil. It's likely Yeshua himself was anointed with the cannabis oil. All of this information is available online. You can research these things. So that's just some history. But in terms of Rastafari in Jamaica, oftentimes it's associated with the interaction with the East Indian community there. I don't know the intricate spot about that, but I know that Africans were using the cannabis in Africa and likely brought cannabis seeds with them to Jamaica during the transatlantic slave trade. We know that Africans put seeds under their tongues in different places and they would bring them into the New World. That's how we got Aki, for example, which is from West Africa. So we know that seeds were being taken into the New World, and I'm likely cannabis was one of them. However, in the Indian community, cannabis is also used as a sacrament. The Hindus, the sadhus, you see them with their long locks. They smoke cannabis. They call it bang or different names when they use it. Ganja itself comes from an Indian word from the river Ganges. And when you look into the history of the river Ganges, you find out that Ganges was an Ethiopian king who establishes his domain in that region. And when you look into the history, I keep saying this, when you talk about the Hindu Kush, Kush and the Kushites, all of those regions, there was a time when Kush was the largest empire on the planet, and it stretched into these regions. So those southern Indian empires, they were African people, and you can still see that on the islands off of the coast of India and these uncontacted islands. When you look at the people, are straight African people. So the story is still there. So either way you put it, whether it's our East Indian brothers or coming through from the African who were enslaved, the use of cannabis was a tradition that didn't start with the revelation of His Imperial Majesty. However, when we look at our founding father, or one of our founding fathers, Leonard Howell, and his agricultural foundation and the settlement at Pinnacle, we see that cannabis was one of the major crops that was being grown at Pinnacle. It wasn't the only crop yet. They were selling other foods in the market, and this sets the black print for how Rastafari view herb. The herb is the healing of the nation, but it's not just cannabis. Cannabis is one of many herbs that we really cite and that we really use as Rastafari people. And I'm going to give some of my personal opinions about, cannabis in Jamaica, what's happening. I work very closely with brethren and sisters in Jamaica on these issues as a part of the Haile Selassie Foundation for Law and Society. I've been blessed to be a part of a lot of non-profit works that have happened over the years. So I'm not just active in my local Washington, D.C. region. I'm very active in Jamaica. We're also active in Africa, specifically in Ghana through the works with Habisha. So we have a lot, and I keep saying that the network is a superpower, and we'll bring on some of the people from those works onto the Lion Talk, and we'll put little snippets in this, as we're going to do with this episode with a ganja grower named Angel, who's growing here locally. So we'll have some of his highlights from a future Lion Talk episode. So there is so much that we can say about the use of cannabis, but it becomes associated at Pinnacle with the Rastafari community. It becomes the basis of that economics. Pinnacle was raided and destroyed in the late 50s, and from that Rastafari has not ever recovered, because that destabilization set a precedence of poverty within the movement. Pinnacle was not an impoverished community. When they raided Pinnacle, people were living well. They were living in harmony. They were living in peace. They had created an agrarian enterprise and society, the Howellites, and we have to dig up and always remember their contribution, because even right now we're trying to return to that foundation. And again, one of the reasons I started the Lion Voice is because we're going to document part of that return here on this platform, at least my involvement in that return and some of the major figures. It's very important, because people think that the best years of Rastafari have passed, that they were in the 70s and the 60s. No, Rastafari just get ready, and trust me, on the day when Rastafari get ready, them have to move.
Well, millions of Africans were stolen and taken in bondage and suffered terrible acts of terrorism. Well, millions of Africans were stolen and taken in bondage and suffered terrible acts of terrorism. Well, it's best that we live out west, living in this life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, can't see no progress. So it's best that we live out west, living in this life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, can't see no progress. See them slave for paychecks. Work every day, grow old from the stress that pays. They're getting cold in the west. Remember we were bought and sold for gold down in the west. I check in my history and I see the sweat from our back to them country. Black people hungry still for the money. Them a robber, them a steal. Funny cause the slave has to face $100 bill for him. Y'all can act like it ain't a big deal, but I got to stand for the black. Color of my skin could have never changed that. No, the slave master thought y'all never talk back, but I must be back. See them on the war with Iraq, and my people them dying from the ears and crack. They lack basic things that they need, so they taste the Benjamins, living like second class citizens. Time to look within. Time for Haile Selassie, I King of Kings, and Ethiopia there from the beginning. Well, ancient memories as it was, miss the soul of the people. So it's best that we live out the west, living in this life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, can't see no progress. So it's best that we live out the west, living in this life life full of stress. Can't you see the government couldn't care less? Work every day, they still come to a rest.
The shores, beautiful faces, take me to the Niger to behold creation. Look at the lions and tigers. Mother Africa, so majestically attired. Crown from her head to her toe with gold and sapphire, platinum, copper, rubber, and manganese. Tried anciently along the ancient seas. Under the blue now, fall sipping my ancient trees.